I've always been conscious that I could not explain how one designs. We sign a contract and we promise we'll do it, but you can't explain how it's done. And it's a little scary. Like, my mother would ask me what I was learning in college, and I couldn't explain it to her. Others might look at me and think I had my act together. But it always feels like you're, flying by the seat of your pants. You're up against it, and somehow a collection of things coalesces so they might be the spark of a solution or a physical form. When I graduated from high school, my father decided to celebrate the idea that his son was going to study architecture by taking 6 weeks off of work. And we spent those 6 weeks on a sort of mini grand tour of Italy together. And I think I came back with a much broader sort of cultural and spiritual, historic sense of the importance of architecture, that we're a species who build, and we build for our spirit.
I think Frank is a very good observer of life, and I think that takes curiosity. And Frank has always exhibited to me a person of great curiosity.
The way Frank influenced me was he encouraged me to be a design thinker, and he encouraged me to not get trapped in maybe a preemptive thought or a solution, and to really observe and to let that then guide your design instincts.
Some people have it all thought out before they're in a circumstance. He would produce a point of view that is not necessarily an architect's point of view. It's Frank's point of view.
There is this idea that design is about aesthetics, and we all like buildings that look good. But to me, there's a social purpose in that as well. Its visual and physical feel are very much part of what can give a place the emotional power to bring people together.
Seeing how people live is completely germane to how you ultimately design for their life. I think Frank has an equally attuned sense of what space really does in real time and real space. And I think we learned that at RPI. I think he's extremely good at it.
Just around the time we were graduating, Wilkes-Barre experienced the Agnes flood. And so suddenly Bolin and Powell were very, very busy. And so Peter brought John in, and John brought me in, and I brought several people in. And we had a kind of clique of people who had studied together. And because the relationships were based on really deep friendships and sort of living like a family isolated there in Wilkes-Barre, the culture of the larger version of the firm very much propagated because people who came from that pressure cooker knew each other, liked each other. I think that's a good piece of the magic that propelled this organization into its strange present.
I think Frank's effect on not only Wilkes-Barre but the region will have a very long life in affecting people. People will interact with what we did, what we have done.
Frank really encouraged me to stay involved in community. You can find these amazingly rich architectural opportunities that are so much more than just great architecture. They are impactful to the people that live in your communities.
Wilkes-Barre is coming back wonderfully now, but there was always a sense there of knowing how to make do with very little, and therefore understanding how to make the most out of what you have. And I think that's another cultural attribute that I absorbed from living in that environment. Making sure anything you do for more than one reason. My involvement with this series of 50-year timeless buildings, it's been a great joy for me. After living in Pennsylvania for 5 decades, I was able, as I thought about each of those buildings, to put them in a kind of cultural and historic circumstance. Or I think of archaeology as being architecture in reverse. There's that sort of duality of looking archaeologically at something and deducing what you can know about that time as a good flip side of what you do as an architect, where you start with the present and you try to imbue the things that an archaeologist may someday find. I think the firm, within the world of the environment in which it operates, there are people who are more like the conductor of the orchestra, and then there are people who actually make really good music.
He's very methodical about how he organizes the thoughts that he has. And that's probably something that I think the young staff in a firm like BCJ probably admire in some ways the most. How do you actually organize the group, your thoughts, and everything else to put it together and make it be something?
From a young architect's perspective, Frank's curiosity about things was really driven by trying to find what the right solution was, regardless of whose idea it was, or regardless of how unorthodox it might be. He was very much driven about, and I would say curious about, what other opportunities are.
In the latter years of my career, people right out of school could do amazing things that I could never in my dreams ever do. And I got to work with these people. And so you had a situation in which older architects were able to do things specifically because they were working directly with very, very young architects who brought things to the table that had been unimaginable a few years earlier. The generation of people I had the joy of working with more recently would turn out later in their careers to be nothing like me, to be something very, very new. And while I won't live to see it, I think it's a joy to think about that.